There is something strange happening behind the scenes of your life right now. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Right now. And the shocking part is that it involves someone you love deeply, and two people who know far more about you than you realize. Before you dismiss this as impossible, stay with me, because what you're about to hear connects directly to the title of this message. Someone you love has two friends who think you're very different from what they first believed. In fact, they cannot stop talking about you. But the reason why is not what anyone expected. At first, these two friends had already formed an opinion about you. They thought they knew exactly who you were. They believed they had figured you out. Your strengths. Your weaknesses. Your intentions. Your future. But then something happened. Something changed the entire story. And now, the conversations happening when your name comes up are completely different from the conversations that happened before. One of these friends is extremely observant. They notice things most people miss. The way you carry yourself. The way you respond under pressure. The way you remain standing even after disappointment. This person expected you to quit. They expected you to become bitter. They expected life to eventually break your spirit. But instead, they watched you keep moving. And that confused them. Because people are supposed to become weaker after certain experiences. Yet somehow you became stronger. The second friend is different. This person pays attention to energy. Not just actions. Not just appearances. Energy. And according to them, there is something unusual about you. Whenever your name enters a conversation, they immediately become curious. Because they feel that your story isn't finished. They believe there is something important approaching your life. Something nobody else can see yet. And here's where things become even more surprising. These two friends don't always agree. In fact, they disagree about almost everything. Yet there is one thing they both agree on. You. That almost never happens. Think about that carefully. Two completely different people. Two completely different perspectives. Yet both arriving at the same conclusion. What conclusion? That the person they originally judged no longer matches the person they see today. You have changed. You have evolved. And the change is impossible to ignore. But that's not the biggest revelation. The biggest revelation happened during a recent conversation. Your name came up unexpectedly. Nobody planned it. Nobody forced it. It simply happened. And when it did, the atmosphere shifted. The conversation became serious. One friend said something that surprised everyone. They said, "I think this person is going to accomplish something none of us expect." The room became quiet. Because the statement sounded bold. Almost ridiculous. But then the other friend responded. And their response shocked everyone even more. They said, "I've been thinking the same thing." That moment changed everything. Because suddenly this wasn't one person's opinion. It was two. And when two independent people reach the same conclusion without planning it, people start paying attention. Now here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes the people watching your journey see your growth before you do. You're busy dealing with daily challenges, daily stress, daily responsibilities. Meanwhile, other people are standing outside the situation and noticing patterns you can't see. They see your persistence. They see your resilience. They see your potential. And sometimes they become convinced of your future long before you become convinced of it yourself. That is exactly what's happening here. One of these friends believes you're standing on the edge of a breakthrough. Not because of luck. Not because of chance. Because of everything you've survived. They believe your struggles have been preparing you, training you, strengthening you, building a version of you capable of handling opportunities that would have overwhelmed you years ago. The other friend agrees. But for a different reason. They think your greatest quality isn't talent. It isn't intelligence. It isn't charisma. They believe your greatest quality is endurance. You keep going. When others stop, you continue. When others complain, you adapt. When others surrender, you persist. And according to them, that trait alone separates you from most people. Now pay attention. Because this next part is important. There is someone you love who has heard these conversations. Maybe not every detail. Maybe not every word. But enough to understand what is happening. And the effect has been powerful. Because when people you trust speak highly of someone, it changes how you see that person. Gradually. Quietly. Without even realizing it. The person you love has been listening. Observing. Thinking. Reconsidering things. And they have started noticing qualities in you that they overlooked before. Qualities that were always there. But hidden beneath assumptions. Hidden beneath expectations. Hidden beneath old perceptions. Those qualities are becoming impossible to ignore. Now here's where the story takes another unexpected turn. One of these friends recently admitted something. They confessed they were wrong about you. Completely wrong. Imagine how rare that is. Most people never admit when they're wrong. Even when the evidence is obvious. Yet this person openly acknowledged it. They said they underestimated you. They misjudged you. They expected less from you than they should have. And now they regret it. Why? Because the version of you they see today is far more impressive than the version they imagined. The second friend had a different confession. They admitted they have become protective of your future. Not because they're obsessed. Not because they're involved. Because they genuinely believe something significant is coming. And they don't want anything to interfere with it. That statement stunned everyone. How often does someone become protective of another person's future without expecting anything in return? Almost never. Yet that's exactly what happened. Now let me tell you the most shocking part of all. Neither of these friends is focused on your past anymore. Think about that. People usually define others by their mistakes. Their failures. Their embarrassing moments. Their worst chapters. But these two friends have stopped talking about your past. They only talk about your future. That is a massive shift. Because it means they believe your future is more important than anything behind you. And when people begin focusing on your future instead of your past, it usually means they expect something extraordinary to happen. The person you love has noticed this. They may not say it directly. They may not reveal it openly. But they've noticed. And it has created questions in their mind. Questions they didn't have before. Questions like, have I underestimated this person too? Is there more to them than I realized? What if they're becoming someone remarkable? Those questions are growing stronger. Day by day. Conversation by conversation. Observation by observation. And the answers are becoming harder to ignore. Because the evidence keeps appearing. In your actions. In your mindset. In your growth. In your determination. The truth is that people expected your story to follow a predictable path. But it didn't. You surprised them. You confused them. You exceeded their expectations. And now they are watching closely because they don't know what you'll do next. That's powerful. Very powerful. Because the moment people stop assuming they know your limits is the moment your possibilities become endless. The person you love is beginning to see that. Their two friends already see it. And whether they admit it or not, the respect they have for you is increasing. Not because you demanded it. Not because you chased it. Not because you forced it. Because you earned it. Quietly. Consistently. One day at a time. And that is why the conversations happening behind your back are no longer negative. They are no longer dismissive. They are no longer filled with doubt. They are filled with curiosity. Expectation. Respect. And a growing belief that your biggest chapter hasn't happened yet. The most incredible part? They think you're only getting started. While others see where you are now, they are focused on where you're going. And according to them, where you're going is far bigger than anyone currently realizes. So keep moving. Keep growing. Keep surprising people. Because somewhere behind the scenes, someone you love and two friends who once doubted you are watching the story unfold. And with every chapter, they are becoming more convinced of one thing. They were witnessing the rise of someone extraordinary long before the rest of the world noticed. But the story does not end there. Because after those conversations, something happened that nobody saw coming. The two friends who had been talking about you began paying even closer attention. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way that would make headlines. But quietly. Carefully. Almost as if they were trying to solve a mystery. And the mystery was you. The strange thing was that every time they thought they had finally figured you out, you surprised them again. One week they believed they understood your limits. The next week you proved them wrong. One day they thought they knew what motivated you. The next day your actions revealed something completely different. It became frustrating for them. Not because they disliked you. Because they could not place you inside the box they had created. And people love boxes. People love labels. People love simple explanations. But you were becoming impossible to explain. That is when one of the friends said something that completely changed the direction of every conversation. They said, "I don't think this person realizes how many people are paying attention." The room fell silent. Because deep down everyone knew it was true. You were living your life as if nobody was watching. Meanwhile, more eyes were on you than you imagined. Some were watching because they admired you. Some were watching because they doubted you. Some were watching because they were curious. But they were all watching. And the person you love? They were watching too. More carefully than ever before. The reason is simple. People become fascinated when someone continues growing despite obstacles. Most individuals stop when life becomes difficult. Most individuals become discouraged. Most individuals settle. But every challenge you survived added another layer to your story. And stories like that attract attention. Now here's where things became even more interesting. One evening, the two friends began discussing a question. A very specific question. A question about the future. The first friend asked, "What happens if this person succeeds at everything we're expecting them to succeed at?" Nobody answered immediately. Because the question felt enormous. It forced everyone to imagine possibilities they had never considered before. Then the second friend finally spoke. And their answer shocked everyone. They said, "If that happens, a lot of people are going to regret underestimating them." The words hung in the air. Nobody argued. Nobody disagreed. Because they all knew there was truth in that statement. You see, there are people who only believe in success after it arrives. They don't support the journey. They don't recognize the effort. They don't appreciate the struggle. They only appear after the victory. But these two friends had started recognizing something before the victory. And that made their opinion different. They weren't reacting to results. They were reacting to potential. That distinction matters. Because recognizing potential requires vision. Anyone can recognize success after it happens. Very few people recognize it before it arrives. The person you love was beginning to understand this too. They started replaying old memories. Old conversations. Old moments. Moments they once ignored. Moments that suddenly seemed important. And as they replayed those memories, a realization began forming. Maybe you had been showing signs of greatness for a long time. Maybe the clues had always been there. Maybe nobody noticed because they were too busy looking for flaws. That realization changed everything. Because once someone begins seeing you differently, they can never fully return to the old perception. The old image starts breaking apart. The new image starts taking its place. And that is exactly what was happening. Now listen carefully. Because this next part might be the most important revelation yet. One of the two friends confessed something they had never told anyone. They admitted that your resilience intimidated them. Not because they feared you. Because they couldn't understand you. Most people need constant encouragement. Constant validation. Constant reassurance. But somehow you kept moving even when those things were missing. That puzzled them. It challenged everything they believed about motivation. The second friend agreed. But they added another observation. They said, "What impresses me isn't what they've achieved. It's what they've survived." That statement hit everyone hard. Because achievement and survival are not the same thing. Many people achieve things. Far fewer survive difficult seasons without losing themselves. You did. And according to them, that made you rare. Very rare. The person you love heard part of this discussion. Not every detail. Not every sentence. But enough to understand the message. Enough to realize that people's opinions about you were changing. Enough to realize that respect was growing. And respect is powerful. Because attraction can fade. Excitement can fade. Curiosity can fade. But genuine respect often grows stronger over time. That respect was beginning to deepen. Quietly. Naturally. Without force. Without manipulation. Without effort. Now something unexpected happened next. A rumor started circulating. Not a negative rumor. A positive one. People began saying that you were preparing for something bigger. Nobody knew exactly what. Nobody had proof. Yet the feeling spread. It moved from one conversation to another. From one person to another. Until eventually it reached people who had never even spoken to you. And strangely enough, many of them believed it. Why? Because your actions supported the story. You carried yourself differently. You thought differently. You reacted differently. You seemed focused. Determined. Prepared. As if you were moving toward something important. The two friends noticed this immediately. One of them even said, "I think they're closer to their breakthrough than they realize." The other nodded. No debate. No disagreement. Just agreement. That alone was shocking. Because these two almost never agreed on anything. Yet once again they agreed on you. Now imagine how unusual that is. Two completely different minds. Two completely different personalities. Two completely different worldviews. Yet reaching the same conclusion. Again. And again. And again. At some point, coincidence stops being coincidence. At some point, patterns become impossible to ignore. That is exactly where they found themselves. Unable to ignore the pattern. Unable to dismiss the evidence. Unable to deny the possibility that something extraordinary might be approaching your life. The person you love sensed this too. And it created a feeling they couldn't explain. Part admiration. Part curiosity. Part anticipation. They found themselves wondering what your future would look like. What your next chapter would bring. What surprises were still waiting ahead. Those questions became impossible to silence. Because every new observation added fuel to the mystery. And the mystery kept growing. Then came the moment nobody expected. A conversation occurred when your name wasn't even supposed to come up. Yet somehow it did. And when it did, one of the friends made a prediction. A bold prediction. A prediction so specific that everyone immediately remembered it. They said, "1 year from now, we're going to look back at this moment and realize this was the beginning." The statement sounded dramatic. Maybe even unrealistic. But nobody laughed. Nobody mocked it. Because deep down they could feel something changing too. They could sense momentum building. They could sense possibility growing. They could sense a story accelerating. And your name was at the center of it. The person you love later thought about that prediction for days. Not hours. Days. Because it refused to leave their mind. What if it was true? What if this really was the beginning? What if your biggest chapter had not even started yet? Those questions became impossible to answer. Yet impossible to ignore. And perhaps that is why people continue talking about you. Not because of who you were. Not because of what you've done. But because of who you are becoming. That is the part everyone finds fascinating. That is the part nobody can predict. That is the part creating all the conversations. The truth is simple. Someone you love has 2 friends who think you're very special. Very different. Very uncommon. Not because you're perfect. Not because you've never failed. Not because you've never struggled. Because you kept moving forward when many people would have stopped. Because you continued growing when many people would have settled. Because you became stronger when many people would have surrendered. And now those 2 friends have reached a conclusion they never expected to reach. They believe your story is far from over. They believe your future is brighter than your past. They believe the best chapters have not been written yet. And every day that passes only makes them more convinced. Meanwhile, the person you love is watching all of this unfold. Listening. Observing. Learning. And slowly realizing something remarkable. The person they once thought they fully understood is becoming someone impossible to underestimate. Someone impossible to ignore. Someone impossible to forget. And as the days move forward, one thought continues growing stronger in everyone's mind. If this is only the beginning, what happens when your greatest chapter finally arrives?